and waistcoats, and in racketing about town. There was still a goodly amount left of his inheritance when he met Mamma whilst visiting with friends in the Costwaltz. Mamma was a vicar's daughter, sweet-tempered and sweet-faced, with the most lovely brown eyes, sadly hidden behind the frames of her thick spectacles. The last woman on earth, one would think, to attract my father. He persuaded her to elope with him to Gretna Green, while his elder brother Eustace, who by that time had become the 6th Baron and was the only surviving family member, shrugged indifferently. Mamma's father was livid. Her destiny was to care for him, the vicarage, and his congregation, not marry some rakehell, and so he predicted gloom, doom, and penurious misery for her and her offspring, and disowned her. He was quite surprised when I did not arrive until 2 years later, and grudgingly tried to make amends. But by this time the rift between him and Mamma was too deep. She rebuffed his half-hearted attempts, and so I grew up with no contact with him. That was why, when my parents were drowned in a boating accident while crossing the Channel when I was 7, I was sent to Laytham Hall. "Oh, you poor child!" Aunt Cecily, Uncle Eustace's wife, did not have children of her own. She enveloped me in a fragrant embrace, but it was not my mamma's scent, and instead of returning her embrace, I held myself stiffly. Her enthusiasm dampened, she released me, and I could only be relieved. "Well, you would insist upon taking him in," Uncle growled at her. "Rude brat. Not much to look at either, is he?" A frown furrowed his brow, and he flicked a fingertip against the spectacles I perforce had worn from the time I was a tot, and Papa realized it was not clumsiness that caused me to fall down the stairs or walk into walls, but my poor eyesight that was at the bottom of it. Aunt Cecily sighed. No, I was not a handsome child, but I had been loved. Would I ever be loved again? Uncle snorted. "If it was not for the Laytham mark." On my forearm, it was the shape and size of a penny and the deep red color of the flame. He'd roughly shoved up the sleeve of my shirt and had thrown my arm away from him in disgust, although I didn't know why. "I would have wagered that Maria played my brother false. If we must have a brat about the house that is not mine, you will at least keep him out of my sight." Uncle took pleasure in blaming Aunt Cecily for the fact that after 10 years of marriage, they were still childless. Her mouth tightened, but she said nothing. Mamma, as sweet-tempered as she was, would have taken Papa severely to task for speaking to her like that. Mamma, Papa, I missed them so much and wanted them back. Aunt Cecily tugged at the bell-pull, and within moments calling, the butler who had come to Laytham Hall with her upon her marriage to Uncle Eustace, entered the room. "Milady rang?" "Yes, calling. Master Ashton will be residing with us. The nursery has been prepared. See to it that one of the maids has a care to him until we can find a nurse or a governess." I was too unhappy to protest that I was too old for a nurse and that I would much prefer a tutor to a governess. Calling peered down at me from his great height, and I could tell he did not care for me. However, he nodded. "If you'll come with me, Master Ashton." "Please." I turned to my uncle and aunt, struggling to keep my upper lip firm. "Please, I want to go home." "Do not snivel, boy. This is your home now," Uncle Eustace growled. He was altogether too fond of growling, and I cringed away. "I do not wish to see him when I am at home. Is that plain, Calling? You will inform the rest of the staff in this matter." "Yes, Sir Eustace. Master Ashton." He took my hand and tried to lead me from the room. "I will not go with you," I shouted. "I want to go home." I jerked free and ran back to Aunt Cecily, throwing myself at her and clinging to her skirts. "Please, Aunt." "Brat!" Uncle Eustace yanked me free of his wife, hurting me in the process. "Must I do everything myself?" His fingers closed about my wrist painfully, and in spite of the way I dug in my heels, he dragged me along after him. "No!" I tugged on my wrist, and when he would not release me, sank my teeth into his hand. "Enough of this!" He gritted his teeth and struck me hard enough to knock my spectacles askew. And I stared up at him in utter shock. I had never been struck before in my life. "Now behave, or I will give you a hiding you will never forget."